Oh no, it's a pirate invasion. Bandana, eye patch, sword and buckle clothes and boots. It's time to batten down the hatches and hoist the Jolly Roger because Somali pirates are back on the high seas. Hey buddy, I'm Chrono the Owl. So, we're gonna talk about pirates today, matey. Aye, we'll dive into the recent resurgence of Somali piracy and take a closer look at what's causing this seafaring scourge to rear its ugly head again. We'll explore the political history of piracy and geographical location of Somalia, examine why it declined, and investigate the current uptick in attacks. But don't worry, we won't be taking any hostages. We're not that kind of channel. As the saying goes, circumstances change everything, and people are how they are for a reason. Justifying piracy? Johnny Depp's not watching the video, so you might as well stop praising pirates. He might, you never know. So, these pirates wreaked havoc in the region for quite some time, but as with any area plagued by anarchy, order eventually became known in this part of the Red Sea. Now, you might be wondering, what does the future hold for this once thriving profession in Somalia? Psh. Well, that's precisely what we're about to uncover. Stay tuned until the end to have a better understanding of the factors contributing to the return of Somali piracy and what we might anticipate moving forward. And who knows, you might even pick up a few tips on how to defend your own ship from these swashbuckling scallywags. So, weigh anchor and set sail with us on this epic voyage of discovery. Piracy might seem like a relic from the days of Robinson Crusoe. Even imagining it brings images of this old-style man with a pirate hat and an eye patch. But could piracy still be a thing in the 21st century? It's interesting to think about whether there's any possibility of a pirate apocalypse on the horizon. But first, let's clarify, who exactly are pirates? It's not just a random dude committing crimes at sea. People often confuse piracy with domestic maritime crimes. It is a whole different thing. According to Article 101 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, or UNCLOS, piracy is defined as any illegal acts of violence on the high sea, involving two ships and carried out for personal gain. Therefore, any crime committed within territorial waters doesn't qualify as piracy. In such cases, the government of the territory is responsible for taking appropriate action. When it comes to crimes on the high seas, the jurisdiction capable of addressing the issue can legally intervene. This was one of the biggest challenges in tackling Somalia's pirates. Foreign countries could not take any action because the crimes were committed on Somalia's coast. With Somalia lacking a functional government and a coast guard to manage the situation, the problem only escalated. In cases like this, enforcing laws becomes incredibly difficult, leaving a vacuum for piracy to thrive. Boy, Somalia must be having a blast, brother. I wish I had that kind of freedom. Hang on, calm down, Chrono buddy. The situation was much worse than it seems. These were not goons fooling around and having fun. They were rather compelled to take this extreme step. But to comprehend this, one needs to know the land and the reasons that brought them to these circumstances. The land we know as Somalia was once split between Italian and British control. After several years and conflicts, including World War II, the British gave up their hold on the region. On July 1st, 1960, Somalia was united as a single country. From that point on, the typical struggles of a newly formed nation began to surface. Hello? What is it now? Rude? Anyway, what a chippy place. Perhaps all they did was fighting. Yeah, talk about chippy. Moving on, the typical struggles eventually led to the assassination of Somali President Abdirashid Ali Sharmark on October 15, 1969. Chaos quickly spread under the rule of military leader Siad Barre. A series of conflicts within Somalia's borders, including wars with Ethiopia and the devastating Somali civil war, tore the region apart. This tumbled into complete anarchy, setting the stage for an ultimate doom. In 1991, the last remnants of authority were toppled, plunging Somalia into total chaos. This led to the ousting of Barre and the emergence of an independent Somalia. Following these events in 1981, the Somali Navy was disbanded as well. This grim situation acted as the first brick to build the wall of Somali piracy. But how exactly did this happen? Well, there were many different reasons for that. One key element was the region's unique geographical landscape. Imagine this: A country with expansive coastline and minimal land borders, relying on the sea for its very survival. The waters off the Somali coast were a treasure trove of marine life, teeming with fish just waiting to be caught. Plus, this strategic location in the Indian Ocean offered a convenient shortcut for adventurous seafarers and savvy traders. No doubt, Somalia's geographical position played a significant role in shaping its fate. Whoa, it's like a gold mine. Aye, Captain. But like all gold mines, this one was also at high risk. Imagine this: a nation grappling with its socio-economic challenges, with no coastal guards or navy to protect its valuable maritime resources. That's precisely the situation Somalia found itself in. These factors created the perfect storm, fueling the rise of Somali piracy. As if the situation wasn't dire enough, foreign entities began exploiting this vulnerability, helping themselves to the wealth that should have belonged to the already struggling people of Somalia. In such a state, the poor fishermen and sea workers experienced famine and drought-like situations. The result? Weapons from the Civil War picked up, and the borders around the Indian Ocean used in advantage to hijack these huge trawlers. The fishermen that were deprived of their own goods had no choice but to rob others of their goods. But before long, these fishermen, who initially took on the role of makeshift coast guards to defend Somalia's borders, transformed into the notorious pirates of Somalia we know today. Well, when you're in a crisis, morals shift to biases. As the legend says, when it comes to survival, people forget about religion and morals. Ahoy, matey! Can you believe it? Despite facing countless odds and having limited resources, they still managed to pull off an incredible feat. What was their magic trick to get away and all? Easy peasy. You won't believe the brilliant technique these adventurers used. It's called the mothership technique. Essentially, they used a large ship as a home base, keeping it safely far away from shore. Then they sent out smaller, speedy boats with fiberglass hulls on expeditions, guided by a small light. The way these pirates went about their business was both clever and risky. They would sneak aboard larger vessels and take control, essentially making it game over for the crew. Now, you might be thinking, well, that sounds easy. Well, but let's be real, it was no walk in the park. However, it was undoubtedly convenient for the pirates to take charge in this way. They would hold the crew hostage until negotiations for ransom were met. And let me tell you, hostages were a critical part of the plan. You see, on trading ships like this, the crew could potentially fetch up to a whopping $10 million in ransom. That's right, you heard me correctly, $10 million. But here's the thing, the risk of getting caught was always there. That's why having hostages was essential for their escape plan. After all, they couldn't just let everyone die in a crossfire. Otherwise, what's the point? There should always be an escape plan. Speaking of which, let's escape to the part that has me on the edge of my seat. The fact the pirates are still out there. Patience, matey. At first, it should be known that how exactly these piracy groups were brought to their end. What else? The usual, I'm guessing. Police, fire, boom, ban, head explodes, people dead? Actually, this time, Chrono, you're correct. The 2000s were a dark time for the shipping industry, as piracy continued to run rampant. The total damage was $7 billion per annum. In 2007, a ship was hijacked and ransomed for a staggering $1.5 million. By 2011, pirates had upped the ante, ransoming a ship for a jaw-dropping $6 million. In total, the pirates generated a mind-boggling $238 million in ransom payments by 2010. However, enough was enough, and trading countries banded together to put an end to the Somali piracy era. Task Force 151 was formed in 2009, and their efforts paid off. By 2012, the number of hijackings had dropped significantly. In fact, all recent attempts have failed, with the last attack in April 2019 being unsuccessful. The only successful piracy attack since 2012 occurred in spring 2017. Moving to the Gulf of Guinea, there were 25 reported cases of piracy in 2021, which have since reduced to 19 in 2022. This reduction has resulted in the area being removed as a high-risk zone in the Indian Ocean. Even Somalia is off the high-risk area, mate. Now, when will relationships stop becoming high-risk territories? Well, ignoring that. So does that mean that piracy has been wiped out from the chart altogether? It might be an exaggeration to say such a thing. So yes, the threat of piracy is prevailing. It might not be visible, but a new pirate apocalypse might be right at the corner. This is because even if the naval authorities have acted up on the issue and overthrew these pirates, these people are now involved in many illicit activities. You know, once a pirate, always a pirate. Oil bunkering and pipeline vandalism are crimes they're still involved in. Of course, this is only possible through the ocean. They could be lurking around like common people near the sea itself, just like they did in the beginning when they masqueraded as fishermen and coast guards. But these are only the crimes of the domestic sea, which means they're coming under the state. However, they might also be smuggling arms and contraband to the war of Yemen, according to the national news. Thus, they can be residing around the coast to commit such crimes as smuggling, as these crimes also include the high seas, meaning they're not under the state. Meanwhile, they could be prepping up to match with the tech Coast Guard ships. You might not know if a training terrorist organization is getting trained, or even worse, acting as a local navy. The present situation in Somalia is dire. According to Lloyd's List, the country is currently facing drought, with famine looming on the horizon. We can only hope that the people of Somalia will not be driven to pick up their weapons once again, but the reality is that the circumstances may well lead to such a scenario. Also, a naval task force called Mare Liberum is being forced to combat these piracy issues according to Campion. It is a reminder to not let the guard down. These movements suggest how freedom of the sea movement can bring a new anarchy anytime. Plus, recently a second skiff was sighted in the Gulf of Aden. According to a recent report, 10 to 12 boats were sighted with 6 people. All this shows that the danger has not ended yet. The lull in the pirate world thus should not be the end, but just silence for the time. That's creepy, matey. All you can take from these incidents is that the root cause of piracy often lies in underlying issues and circumstances. In the case of the Somalian pirates, poverty and injustice served as a leading cause in their emergence. And yet, they were able to generate massive profits by hijacking small boats, causing a worldwide impact. But as the saying goes, what goes up must come down, and the Somalian pirates were no exception. Although they may have faded from the headlines, they are far from gone. In fact, it's entirely possible that they're preparing for another wave of piracy as we speak. Let me pose a question to you. Could piracy once again become a major issue in this day and age? It sure is a fruit for thought.